Hey everyone, welcome to Marketing for Designers podcast. I'm your host, Masha Coyne, a messaging strategist and a copywriter for the interior design industry. I've been marketing for what feels like forever in my past career at some of the biggest global firms like KPMG and Deloitte. Today, I write website copy for designers using my signature voice of customer framework. If you're a designer looking to up your marketing game and attract premium clients, this podcast is for you. Each week on the show, we're going to be talking all things marketing, from branding to messaging to social media, SEO, and so much more. So you can have all the tools you need to grow your business and attract your dream clients. Hey guys, welcome back to Marketing for Designers podcast. I'm your host, Masha, and my guest today is Erica Gelman, the principal designer of Erica Gelman Design. I feel like Erica needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. Erica is a principal designer of Erica Gelman Design, a full-service boutique firm specializing in large-scale luxury residential design, which includes builds, new builds, home renos, and full-service decorating projects in Toronto, Canada. Erica runs a dynamic team of 6, and I believe they're currently hiring right now. So if anyone is interested, now is your opportunity. Erica has been featured in multiple international industry publications and local publications, I should say, including Elle Decor, Style and Home, Harper's Bazaar, and I just found out before we started recording, also Toronto Sun. She actually had a column there, but we'll get into it. I'm sure there's so many more accomplishments and creds that I'm forgetting to mention, but as you can see why I'm so excited to have Erica on the show. So Erica, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to get into all things marketing and all things you and all things your business, because I think you're doing such a phenomenal job. So, Erica, I feel like where I want to start is I've been watching you for a few years, following you on Instagram, watching your stories, and I feel like I already know you because you're so good at just showing up, showing behind the scenes, giving people a glimpse of your team and all the cool things that you guys do in a very, very fun way, kind of non-forced, very natural way. You know, the site tours, a day in a life kind of content. Is that intentional? Is that kind of your strategy?
Very intentional. Yes. I don't want to call it a strategy though, because I have to say that, and I don't know like how far you want to go back, but people also
as far as you want.
People think that I got into this business yesterday and all of a sudden I'm doing these large scale projects, but that is absolutely not how I started or where I came from. I've been running my business now for 16 years and the projects and the magnitude of scope that we're doing now is absolutely the complete opposite of where I started from. So going back to your question of like intentional, yes, every single thing that I do is to tell the story. And I think that's always been a part of my marketing strategy. But I've also done a million things that have failed. So I've always just felt that for me, what works is just the most organic and true to who I am. And I very much as a person am very open book. I'm an oversharer.
I love that. I love it. That's why I'm getting the feel that I already know you. And I'm sure that's how your audience feels.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's how I am in real life too. I am very much an oversharer. And sometimes I step back, I'm like,
maybe necessary.
But that's just who I am as a person. And I feel that for me, because I do not have any formal training in marketing. So I just really did every single thing that came my way. I was a yes person from the very beginning. There was absolutely nothing that I said no to. And I think just throughout the years, I've figured out what works. I'm still figuring it out though. I can't say that I feel like I have it down packed, and things are always changing and our business is evolving. I'm evolving as a designer. And I feel like just because of that, the way that I have to, I don't even want to call it market, but yes, it is marketing. The way that I show that is always going to be different because where I am personally and in my career is always changing. And I don't want it to stay stagnant. I want to always be doing something a little bit different.
So it sounds like you don't have like in a traditional sense of a word, you have like content pillars and this is how you share. You kind of go with the flow, show up however you show up in real life, and people get you the way you
Yes.
are.
So, okay, let's go back a little because
Yeah.
I feel that for me that's so important. So when I started my own business, it was 2008.
Mm-hmm.
There was no Instagram. There,
Mm-hmm.
right? That didn't exist. So for me, the only way that I was really able to share my work is, well, I mean, at the very, very beginning was do absolutely everything and say no to no one. And that to me was, okay, I know that I'm going to do a color consultation for someone and they're going to love what I've done and then share that information with their friend. And it was ground zero, as basic as you can get, of I'm going to just start my business based on referrals and based on word of mouth. It was so tricky. The designers that are coming in today's world have such a major advantage, and I can see that too. I can see new designers, young designers that are on social media and showing the work that they're doing, and I think back, wow, it took me a decade to get there, and they've been in the business for 2 years. So I think that there's such a huge advantage to having this whole new platform of social media and being able to expose your work and yourself too, if that's your kind of like marketing game. But so for me, it was just, I'm going to say yes to everything. I'm going to do everything. I just wanted to design. I can't say that enough. I couldn't care less about the payment. I couldn't care less about if I was getting paid or not. It was just, let me do my craft. Like I had it in me and I wanted to share it so badly.
Mm-hmm. And that you did. So at first, when there was no Instagram, when you started, how did the word spread? Was that genuinely word of mouth and just referrals from friends and family and people that you knew?
Yes. So I did not come from a family that we had, and I've shared this before, a network of people that were hiring designers. So it wasn't so much, friends and family that were hiring me. It was trying to kind of get to the outside circle, but that's why I would do anything. If you wanted me to come with you to a store and consult on what chair to get, I would do that. I was hired to come with some people to design kitchens, not for me to actually do any of the design work, but literally just be a mouthpiece for them. So they would take me to like a kitchen fabricator, and then they would put together all the designs, and then they would be like, well, what do you think?
Like a
Should we
sounding board.
that's it. I was essentially just there as a consultant, and then my first kind of job, we'll call it. No, I mean, I was a job. I got paid, but was through, yes, a family friend's accountant. So that was, I felt like, oh my God, this is my big break. But what happens when you don't necessarily have an immediate circle of people that are going to be hiring you, that one kind of big break takes a long time to kind of get that second break, right? And like, it's not just, if you have this, I would call it a community of people that are in the market for designers, it's a little bit easier. Whereas, like, oh yeah, I know this person who needs one. I need this person. And for me, it was like very slim pickings. And that's why there was never a no. So I did my first kind of renovation project on my own, and it was wonderful. Had a great experience, but that it kind of just ended there. Like the client loved everything, but he didn't necessarily have a community of people that maybe was looking for a designer. So I couldn't have relied on just a simple word of mouth from one person. I had to essentially spread my seed everywhere. And that's exactly.
So it wasn't like a ripple effect from that first one. I'm curious, what
No.
was the second project?
I did a whole bunch of small things, but I would say my second big project was a friend of my brother's who lived in a bachelor pad, and I just really luckily was looking for a designer, but he had some pieces already. And so grateful for him really just trusting me. Like it wasn't like I had a portfolio at that time. I was working and I was trying to get my gears in motion, but there wasn't anything major. And he was just like, "Oh, I have a couple pieces, but like let's do some more. Maybe let's do some built-ins." So we did a whole bunch of built-ins for him, and I think I reupholstered furniture. I did pillows. I was so excited. I was like, "Oh my God, I could design pillows." So yeah, it was, that was kind of it was a smaller project. And then from there, I would say within that year, I started definitely getting busier, where the projects, again, I can't really call them, like they were projects at the time, but they were on a much smaller level. And I was doing things.
Yeah.
I think it's the best way to put it. I was definitely helping, and I was assisting, and I was consulting, but it wasn't these projects that had processes, and maybe I'm kind of a little bit jaded because that's how we work now, but it wasn't, to me, I look back and I thought it was a project, but it was definitely
like stepping stones
for sure.
I love that. I mean, I can relate for sure. I'm going through a rebrand right now, and I look at my website now from 6 years ago when I started my business, and my process was like 3 steps. We talk, I write, that's it. What? Where are all the steps in between? How did that even happen? But you evolve, you grow, and things change in your business. So I totally get that. I'm kind of curious. I'd love to hear your perspective on niching down, if you do consider yourself as a niche down business.
So before I even really understood what kind of marketing was, I knew that I had to almost brand myself. And I actually think back, and it's wild because the projects that I was working on were much smaller. But for instance, I had completely decorated a family room for someone. And she asked me, "Oh, are you going to shoot the space?" It turned out beautifully. Like we did all custom pieces. We did millwork in there. We did a lot. We tackled actually a lot of their main floor. However, within the family room, it was complete open concept to a builder's kitchen, and we did not touch the kitchen at all. And it was a subdivision builder's kitchen. It was like super dark brown. And I was like, I can't photograph this because you're going to see the kitchen in every single angle. And it just didn't meet this expectation that I had in my head. And I wasn't there. Don't get me wrong. I was not there. I should have been photographing like, the legs on chairs, but I wanted this perception of my projects being at a certain caliber. And I knew that if I was photographing this beautifully designed first main floor family room, but there was a subdivision builder's kitchen in the background of these photos, somebody was going to look at that and think I designed that. And I just knew that didn't align with this vision that I had.
And was that a catalyst moment? Like, was that a moment where you realized that, okay, from now on, it's like either an entire floor or a whole house?
I would say it wasn't that project necessarily. I was doing several projects kind of at that time. I was doing some bigger projects as well. But it was definitely within around that time frame. And I would say if I were to kind of date this, it would probably be, I think it was before my daughter was born, so maybe like 11 years ago, maybe 12. So it was probably about 4 years after I started my business. I knew that there had to be a parameter for me. And I feel like that's kind of where I'm going to call it branding, but that's really where this parameter started for me, where I knew I always had a vision, always. And I always knew that it needed to be high-end luxury. And that was just something that really excited me. And and I wasn't doing it, but I knew that I wanted to do it. So it had to be, even when my clients' budgets didn't allow for custom, I would push and I would beg, borrow, and steal, and I would get custom pieces in every single person's house. And I could have been giving it to them at complete cost. And again, at this point, it wasn't to me about, well, how am I going to make the most amount of money? I knew that I needed to I needed to get the experience. I needed to develop a portfolio. I needed to work my butt off. I needed to get people to trust me. I think that was also something that I always kind of knew. And from all these levels that I knew that I needed to, my targets I needed to hit, I knew that that was going to get me into this direction of where I needed to go. And for me, that was always this kind of brand identification. I wanted to identify as a luxury brand, even when I wasn't there yet, but I knew that's where I wanted to go.
I feel like that's where some interior designers find themselves in. They're currently working, they come to me when they're doing a rebrand or they're pivoting in terms of the audience that they're serving. What advice would you give them if they're working with this kind of client base, but they want to move up? They want to pivot and attract a different kind of audience. And you just explained what you did. You were trying to do it all and trying to do custom, even if custom was not requested or expected. What advice would you give to somebody who's trying to evolve as far as the audience that they're trying to attract?
Somebody once said to me, tell us what you want. And us, I think, is the people. So I wanted to do big houses. I wanted to do full scale projects. I remember meeting with like fabric suppliers. I had like an office in my basement when I first started, and Kravit was the first one to give me an account. And they sent Brenda Bradley, who's actually still my rep. She actually just retired, but they sent her to be my rep, and she was like, "Oh, like what kind of projects are you doing?" And I said, "Right now, like her room, but I really want to do big projects." And she was like, "Okay, well, so do big projects, like do full house projects." I said, "Well, no one's giving them to me yet." She's like, "Oh, you'll get them. Like, just keep telling people that you want to do them." And I literally, like anyone who, at first I was very shy about even telling people that I was a designer, and I was like not a self promoter at all. And then I feel like once I got more comfortable with that, and once I became a self promoter, I would just tell people. I was like, "Yeah, I'm an interior designer. I do residential. I'd love to do full." I never said I do them. I just said I love to do full houses. I'd love to do new builds. Like I had actually started a new build maybe around that time, but I would just tell everybody, like, this is what I'd love to do. And I feel like without actually saying that on my social media and on my media platforms, I tell people. I'll post pictures of stones, for instance, that I'm not using, but I'll say, would love to use this in a kitchen, or I can see this being in the most incredibly designed kitchen, or I would love to use this in a kid's if it's a really crazy wallpaper. And I do that all the time. Like I could see this in a kid's bathroom, or I could see this in a playroom, and I'll put it out there. I don't have a spot for it, but I'm just kind of putting it out there. Like I would love to do this, and someone's gonna see it.
I swear I can attest to that, because I've seen you do something like that. I've seen you get excited about a particular little thing, and you would say something like, "Oh, somebody do that," or "Somebody use that," or "That's cool. I like that." And that's so true. I'm curious, what would you say your differentiator is? That thing that sets you apart?
I don't know. I mean, I there's a lot of internal things that I can say, because I've a lot of times we do. I collaborate, and not in a project sense, but I collaborate a lot with other designers to really kind of understand how they do their business. And I just feel like it makes our industry better, their processes. And I'll meet up with tons of other designers, and we'll discuss process, and we'll discuss like the way that we manage things, the way that we manage things internally. And through that, I mean, I've definitely made changes through the business. So I can tell you internally, but I think from a like a full brand perspective, one thing, and I've never been scared of this, is we are so not your typical Canadian designer, in the sense of,
first of all, what's a typical Canadian designer? I want to know.
So that's very simple. You take, we have magazines that will showcase a lot of local talent. And while the work is beautiful, we have, I feel like maybe Canadian is not the right word. It's maybe local, maybe like Toronto, maybe Toronto. We're very safe. we've always been very safe. Always, always, always. And I have never been safe. Never, ever, ever. And I feel like that's really where I shine. I can do it. Like, of course I can do it, but it also doesn't get me excited. And if I'm going to be selling you something, and I don't even feel like I'm selling it. I feel like I'm just providing you with an experience with it. But if I'm going to be putting something in your house, you want your designer to be really excited about it. And being really safe doesn't get me excited.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that has to be on your website somewhere, like far from safe. Not a safe, not a safe designer.
Not a safe designer. No. Yeah. It's I don't know if I've ever really done like a white on white space before. I don't think I've ever done something like that.
But that's why your clients come to you now, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're known for. That's what they request. They want that Erica feel. They want that, bold and dramatic. I'm not sure if I'm using the right terms as to how you describe your aesthetic, but that's what you become known for.
Oh yeah. I think that I don't think that a client who wants something to be super safe and super streamlined and not layered, I think that there is definitely a niche pocket of designers that could do that. They're not really coming to me. I'm the first person to try to push you out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the clients have to just trust and, kind of like close their eyes and hold their breath and be like, oh, I hope this works. I've actually had one particular client, it was a new build project, new build and full decorating. And she was like, oh, I want to do really cool things. And all these really cool things that I showed her, she got really scared about. She did a couple of them, but there was a couple that she was like, oh, I can't. Like, I can't do it. And then when the house was done, we still talk. She'll send me messages like, I'm so mad at myself for not listening to you. I wish I would have done that. Now that she's living in the space and I feel that now she's seen these areas that I did really push her on, she's kind of like, oh, I wish you would have pushed me harder. I'm like, there's nothing I could have done at that point except like just put it in there. And I've done that too. I've small things, obviously not like massive investment pieces, but small things like I'll put them in, I'll purchase them on my own. I'll put them in, let you see it. And even if you said no, and I've done this with a client before, it was just like a whole bunch of fabrics that they were terrified. And I'm like, they're going to love it when they see it in the space. And I just did it and I put it in there and they're like, well, obviously it looks amazing. And obviously we want it now.
Trust the process.
I'm definitely taking, a little gamble on myself, but in my head, I'm like, it's okay. If they don't love it, then I'll keep it and I'll do it somewhere else. Someone else will love it, but usually they do.
It's so funny because I interview my clients, so the homeowners that have invested in interior designer. Before I write their website copy, I interview 5 of their clients. And this is the one thing that 9 out of 10 times they say that I wish, because I asked them about the regrets or I asked them about what surprised them about their experience of working with this designer or with my client. And they would say things like, I wish I would have trusted her sooner in the process. I wish I would have said yes sooner, because at first, yes, they're all a little bit scared. You're pushing them out of their comfort zone and they're like, not really. But then at the end, that's what they say. That's what they all say. Like, it turned out amazing. I didn't know how I'm going to feel about it, but it turned out amazing. So it's like, trust your designer. At the end of the day, this is what you came to them for.
I know.
That's interesting.
We've done, so one part of our process is we do conceptual phases. And our conceptual phases we basically render out what the spaces are going to look like. We design everything. We gather all the samples. So it's a very sensory experience. So you get to see what the space looks like, and then you touch and feel the materials as well. And one client in particular, about a year ago, was like, I really want a white kitchen. And I'm like, oh, well, you've come to the wrong designer, like I'll joke around and, they're like, no, honestly, everywhere else, like go wild, do you, but the kitchen, like we really just want something super classic. And I said, I can do classic and it doesn't have to be white. But I said, you know what? I told my team, let's give her a white kitchen and then let's show her what a not white kitchen is going to look like. So we rendered out, we did a white kitchen exactly like she had asked. And she sat there and was like, no. And her kitchen now has pink cabinetry. It's pink stained cabinetry.
Oh my God.
We're working on it right now. It's not complete yet, but yeah. So we just finalized the stone selection. And they're always like, they always look at me when we're finalizing. So we don't take our clients shopping with us. We pre-select everything, but when we do the final selection, we'll take them for just to tag all the slabs, just so they can see what they look like in large scale. And they always look at me and they're like, you want to do the wilder ones if there's like an option of one or two. I'm like,
That's so cool. I love that. I love that element of your process. And you're so clear about your process and so like, well, this is how it is. I love that. So I want to ask you something from what I've seen about how you show up on social and what of the events that I recently saw you on speak. You seem to have a very clear view of who your ideal customer is. Can you tell me, first of all, who is your dream client? And the second thing is that I would love to know is, how did you arrive at that?
Okay, so I mean, yeah, there's so many questions in there. I don't know if I have a specific ideal client. I can give you kind of an umbrella of like who they would probably be. They're usually young professionals. They're usually people who are busy and run their own successful lives, if that's running their own successful businesses or running successful family homes, whatever that is. But it's someone who wants to hire us because they want a professional company to take their project from very early on conceptual stages and be able to execute it, and for them to walk in. Like, it is a full luxury experience. And I want them to, for me, a luxury experience is having someone do things for me. Like, I find luxury in, the fact that like I'm a mom of 3, I run a business. There's things that I just cannot do in my house. So I have a cleaning crew that comes like 3 days a week, and I need that. And that to me is a full luxury. Mm-hmm. And so when you're too busy doing things that you're really good at, to me, the identity of a luxury is having someone else do it really well for you. So that's definitely the mindset of my ideal clients. And they put their trust in us, and they don't want to be involved in every single element. They want to come into a beautifully finished home. We definitely want their opinion, and we want them to be involved because it's a huge expense. So we want them to fall in love with it. And for us, a really big part of that is on our onboarding process. We talk to me about the fundamental reason that you're building this house. Like, what purpose do you need? And, we want to know how many people are going to be having dinner on a Friday night. We want to know how many people are going to be watching TV Saturday morning. Like, we want to know all these things, and we want to do all those things for you. We want to be able to really kind of understand your needs and then design around that. So that's definitely, I would say, like the mindset of my ideal client. Otherwise, I would say like there is no real budget in terms of, they have to be able to, they have to be able to want to invest in luxury, because I think that's our sweet spot. It doesn't mean that every single corner has to be super expensive, but I think that they have to have this understanding that in order to achieve this very layered look that they're coming to us and what we want to be able to execute for you is going to come with a little bit of a higher price tag. Mm-hmm. But again, it doesn't mean that every single corner has to be like that. But we also want to know where are areas in the house that you want to invest in, because that could mean your primary spaces, that can mean your kitchen, that can mean your primary bedroom, your primary ensuite. Like there's definitely areas that people will say, like I've worked really hard. I want to be able to walk into my kitchen and know that it was the best investment I'd ever made. Mm-hmm. And some people say, I don't necessarily want to invest a ton of money into my kid's space because they're going to be moving out in 3 years, mm-hmm. things like that.
Mm-hmm. How do you make sure that you attract that kind of client? How do you make sure that your marketing is aligned to attract the client that you want to work with, the client that can afford you?
I have very realistic conversations in my onboarding process. It's actually funny though, because we still work, everyone has a budget. We still work on budgets and we're very mindful of budgets. And we always have these very frank discussions at the beginning of the project. Not everyone knows what those numbers are going to look like, but we always want to gauge. And then I will tell them, if you want to, I'll always ask them, like, what project of ours appealed to you the most? And I won't tell them obviously the exact number, but I'll say, okay, in order for you to achieve that within your space, you should be at a X dollar per square foot. And then sometimes they'll just say, like, we really want this look. We know it's expensive. If someone doesn't, I'm more than happy to educate them. And I think that that's kind of an area that's maybe missing. And communication to me is so important from the first day that we have a meet and greet call to the last day that you're in the house. The communication is the most important aspect. And I feel like that there's a lot of when clients or designers are unhappy within a project, it usually stems back to a miscommunication or misinformation on something. So I like to get all that out of the way at the very beginning. It's kind of like dating. You just be like, okay, so I am really needy.
Yeah.
I really like birthday presents, just you get all that out of the way. Like when you get off the phone with me, you need to tell me you love me. And these are like things that I tell my husband, but okay, you still love me. Like you got to stay. All right, great. Now we can move on. So, I like to have those realistic conversations. So there really isn't anything that they didn't know that they were getting into. To be honest, sometimes I get sticker shock. Sometimes we design things and I was like, oh, I don't know it was going to be that expensive. And then you kind of hold your breath and you're like, okay,
hope to say yes.
That's how much it's going to cost. And then sometimes they'll say, yeah, like, let's do it. I've fallen in love with it. I can't go backwards now. Are times where we have to like value engineer, which we hate, but sometimes we'll do, if we're really set on a specific design, we'll definitely go back and figure out ways to maybe take some layers off or to switch materials out, or, like we know what we're doing. So we'll try to still kind of get you a look that you're going to fall in love with. But I personally, I'm not a huge believer in like the look for less. I know that was like a big, that's like a big misconception, I think, in the industry. If you want something, there's got to be a budget for that something.
But I like that you're very clear on that, what you are and what you're not. And I feel like because you're clear on that, you attract the kind of clients who also want similar things, which is great. So speaking of marketing, what else is as part of your kind of marketing funnel? Like what else do you do aside from Instagram? Because you do an amazing job on Instagram. Is there anything else that you do to kind of, with your visibility, promoting your services, attracting the right kind of clients, getting your name out there?
So I have rebranded 3 times in my 16-year career. So people don't know this, but I started out my business, like fresh out of school. I was like, oh, I made myself business cards. And this was, I don't even want to tell you the date because I'm just going to make myself look old. So we'll go to 20 years ago. I made myself business cards, and I don't know why, but my business was called iFull Interiors.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Okay.
No, a lot of people know. I think like my best friend knew that because she's the one who designed my business cards for me. And then I got them printed on like Vistaprint.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's maybe like one human being that knew that. And then that died right away. Like I knew that wasn't, I didn't know what it was about it, but that name died very early on. Mm-hmm. And then I rebranded again, and my business was called House of Design, mm-hmm. Which was like the legal name, and then it was by Erica Gelman. Like I think later on I put the by Erica Gelman, but that was never part of the legal name. It was House of Design, mm-hmm. And that stemmed from this version of like a fashion house. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking like, how do I, at that point, I think my ideal client was like someone who loved fashion. And I still think that now too, like someone who loved fashion and loved this, kind of like dressing up world. And I feel like that to me was this like very sexy idea of like the interior designer. So I wanted to I think there was definitely an inspiration and like a merge in my head. So it was House of Design. And then at some point it became by Erica Gelman. And I actually had a supplier, full credit to him. This was a million years ago, but he said to me, like, who's House of Design? Like, who is that? And I think this was definitely part of another like rebrand for me. So definitely part of my branding. And he was like, well, who's House of Design? I'm like, what do you mean? By Erica Gelman. He goes, yes. But when people come to someone's house that you've designed and they say, wow, this looks amazing, who did it? You really want them to say House of Design, or do you want them to say Erica Gelman? Because I guarantee you, and this is what he told me, he said, I guarantee they're not calling it House of Design. They're saying, yeah, it was Erica Gelman. And he's like, your business has to be your name. It has to be like, there's no ifs, ands, or like buts about it. It has to be your name. And at that point, I was also doing a lot of design build projects. So I was doing like, we were basically taking on the whole thing. And then when I went into Streamline and went more into just interior design, I called it Erica Gelman Design Inc. And that was it. So that was like that. This is like my third name change. But I feel like the second to the third name change was so much more organic because it was already Erica Gelman. It was already Erica Gelman Design in word of mouth. And the House of Design was almost completely irrelevant to my business. So when that name change happened, it was just like this very natural next step for me. But I don't know if I've even answered your question, but
No, you have, but I'm
delved so deep into how like my branding,
how you show up.
Yeah, the evolution of the brand.
So, and that's interesting because a lot of interior designers are going through that, are facing that dilemma. How do they name their business? If they're, just starting out their business, just launching their studio, what would you say to that? Like, what's your advice for that when they're just starting out, they're just naming, what should they consider? Because not everybody can look 10 years from here on and say what you say. Well, who is the design by? At the end of the day,
Right.
You want your name to be front and center. What would you say? What would your advice be?
Yeah, I mean, when I named, so the very first name was, I think, just I needed a business name. Then the second one I felt like was definitely much more me, but I was scared to name my company Erica Gelman Design because I was like, nobody knows who I am. So if I kind of call it House of Design, I thought it would be much more approachable in the sense of like, well, I'm a business. So that's the mentality that I had. I was like, okay, but if it's a business name, people will think it's a business. They don't necessarily need to know that I'm this like 24-year-old who is, really trying to establish and develop a business for herself. So I was scared of doing that. And I didn't take that leap until I had a little bit of acknowledgement and when I say a little bit, I mean like a teeny amount. When I went to, okay, well now I'm Erica Gelman Design. And I just felt like there was a shift for me saying like, it's okay. Like people will know who you are. So if somebody is scared, and there's so much fear associated with starting your own business, as there should be, you really need to think. It's not, you don't jump into the deep end with no life jacket if you don't know how to swim. So I feel like a little bit of fear definitely makes you stronger. Mm-hmm. It lets you develop this thicker skin, which you definitely need as a business owner, especially in the world of design. But don't be scared of giving yourself more credit than you might deserve at that point. Because I feel like I was scared to give Erica Gelman any credit because who is she? Mm-hmm, right? Nobody knows who she is. So that's
sounds like a bit of imposter syndrome coming to which everybody has, especially in the beginning. And you just got to trust that it will become something.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Erica, tell me, what has been the best investment, if you've done any significant investments in marketing specifically as it relates to marketing? What would that be for you?
So very early on, I hired a PR representative. Um, Looking back, I think that there was, again, I was the yes person, right? So I was saying yes to everything. There was a lot of things that didn't align with who I was as a designer at that point. I think that just, I did a lot of going to home shows and speaking with, like, doing free 15-minute consultations. And I think that was really great as literally a learning experience. I did not get one client out of it, but it was just a wonderful time to have somebody, complete stranger that you've never met, sit down in front of you, and they book free 15-minute consultations, and you sit down and it's like a lightning round, right? They're like, here's my floor plans. What do I do? And your brain has to work like this. So, even now I speak to a lot of designers who are like very well established, and they're like, oh, I need to see floor plans before I do consultations. I need to get an idea from the clients. Like, they need their own time to kind of almost marinate with, like, someone's plans or ideas of what they want. And I never had that opportunity, like, during doing these. So I feel like I was really able to think quick. That was a learning experience to think quick for me. But sorry, I digress. So I did a lot of the home shows, and then I got I started doing a lot of publications where I would be writing my own articles, and then we'd be submitting spaces. So it wasn't that like a magazine necessarily had found my space and then published it and then did a write-up. So they were looking for content, and I was basically doing free write-ups on the spaces that I had designed, which was wonderful. Like, at that point of my career, it was really great to get my feet wet, but I was paying for all of that. Like, I wasn't being compensated or reimbursed for my time or anything. So it was just a matter of me paying public relations representative, and then she would then, I guess, go to her network to try to get things published. And from that, I did end up getting what you mentioned, a column in the Toronto Sun. I think it was called, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was called Design for Living. It didn't have a long lifespan, but again, it was just me taking spaces that I've done and doing write-ups about them. So it was more for like your DIY reader. And it was still really cool. And it was really cool to, like, I did a front cover once for Reno and Decor magazine. And that was such a cool experience, like, just seeing that. And then but these are all like me paying my publicist to get, it was really just to spread awareness, to get me also describing the spaces. So I think that that's a big issue that I feel like we have in the industry, is people can do really pretty things, but they can't actually talk about what they've done to those spaces. And I had no choice. I was, this is a closet that I designed. Now I have to tell you the, like, ifs, the who's, the whys, the hows. Like, I have to tell you everything about the thought process of how I designed it, what materials I used, the idea of how it was going to function. Like, I had to really, really dissect all these spaces that I was doing, because I had a word count that I had to fulfill also. And I think that that's really helped me now in my presentation side of my career, because I can do an 8-hour presentation like that.
Why do you think it's important to have the narrative part alongside your design? Why is that important for clients?
So I'll tell you. So I love that word, the narrative. You have to tell the story of every single space. And I'll say this a million times over. Everyone can do pretty. Like, really, anyone who has good taste can do pretty. So what's different about this space? What's the story behind the space? And that's a huge part of the success of my social media. Is I will show you very raw. I will show you the construction. I will show you our load in. I'll show you. I actually wish there was someone to film the parts of like me sweating and like, I'm actually like a very, I'm not a freaker outer. Like I won't have meltdowns.
Mm-hmm.
When I get really, when there's like a moment of stress, I really am able to figure out a way. I'm like a great problem solver. I'm really good at figuring that out.
Mm-hmm.
I really wish there was somebody to film that, but those are actually parts that you guys don't see. But I think that build up, that story, people will also get this understanding of now they're familiar. So when they see that finished product pop up on my feed, they're like, oh, I was watching those stories. And especially the audience that's been with me for years, they're like, oh, I remember when they showed a render of that. And like, and I'll get people saying that to me all the time. Oh my God, I remember you showed this render and I loved it. And then now you just posted like the finished product, and our projects are really big and they could take a year, 2 years, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
3 years to
Mm-hmm.
get done. So it's really cool to have those people that are so engaged from the very beginning, and then they get to have that full circle moment where they're like, oh wow, like I remember seeing that in its raw stages. So I feel like the narrative is the hook.
Yeah.
And for me, the my hook is my audience, but from a design perspective, the narrative, the hook is going to be for your clients. Like, tell them about the space, let them feel what the space is going to make them feel like. Like I once had a client who was like, I want to read my Sunday morning newspaper in the banquette of my kitchen. I want to walk to the market and get like fresh flowers. Obviously, she lives downtown because you can't do that in our neck of the woods. Masha and I live pretty close to each other. But and I remember and that was just from an onboarding call. And I remember feeling what that space was going to look like. And from that feeling, for me, I knew exactly what I wanted the design to be. And so I want to be able to translate that to my clients as well. Like if they feel what the space is going to feel like, or if they get this hook of, okay, I can envision what my like Sunday morning is going to be like, then they'll trust that the design will follow.
Mm-hmm. So there's almost like an educational aspect, because sometimes, yes, they can trust your vision, but sometimes you need to provide a bit more narrative for them to truly visualize what's the end result will be.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So PR was a great investment from what I understand.
Yeah, it was a great investment early on in my career. And again, it was at the point, I will say, for young designers or anyone who is, maybe this is their second career, but they're at a very, very early stage for myself. And if you are someone who is starting a career in interior design, you can't compare what 16 years has taken me to do for someone to say, well, no, I'm not, that project isn't big enough, or the fee isn't large enough, or, whatever it is. You just have to do everything, because that's how your stepping stones will grow. So, and why I kind of go back to that is because at that point of my career, there wasn't any other way for me to break those barriers than to do the home show. There wasn't any other way than for me to write articles for DIYers that I still knew were not going to be my client, but I knew that it was just going to be an additional layer of exposure for me. I knew it was going to be an additional layer for me to learn how to be able to explain and really just delve deep into like what these spaces were, or and some of them were literally like vignette shots. So it wasn't even this full anything, but it was for a particular demographic. It was for those people who were going to be doing things on their own. And I feel like that was my audience at that time. Mm-hmm. Even though they might have not been my clients, those were my audiences. And then from that, your audience becomes a little bit bigger and it becomes a little bit different. But what I'll say for me, where my business had turned around, right? It's an evolution. The business had really, I would say, did the biggest change in 2020. And
How
yeah.
come? Not saying how come, we know how come,
Yeah.
but what's changed? What happened in 2020 that changed dramatically?
So March 2020, a date that I'm sure we'll all remember, when the world thought that it was ending. I had so many at that time, thinking I had so many potential projects at my fingertips. And I was going to see, I remember driving the weekend of, I think it was, what day did the world close? I think it was like March 13th. So
like after March break, where like kids are not going back to school. I'm like, wow.
So that weekend I had driven up to a cottage in Muskoka, and they were like full gut, everything. And then I had so many new projects that I was being introduced to, like all in and around this time frame. Some of them had provided me with deposits, and then some of them I was just providing proposals for. And then the world just stopped. And I was following up, and I was reassuring people, like, we're still alive, we're still here. And like, everyone was just like, no, 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 no. I was giving people back their deposits. They were like, we don't know what's going to happen. They're all the prospective jobs that we had that were potential. None of them, they all fell through. None of them moved forward. And so for me, I was at home, I was working from home. We still had projects. We had a project that was almost in completion, and the client, it was a full gut reno and a full decor project. And the client was just like, whatever you guys have, like if there's a chair that's ready, just send it over. Like, she thought that all of our suppliers were going to close down. And I was like, I promise you, it's all going to get delivered. I promise you. And everyone was just panicking. She said, no, like, I've given all this deposit, whatever you guys have, just deliver it to my house. And I remember we were delivering like half pieces of things, and she didn't care. She was fine with it, just as long as she saw something tangible being delivered. So anyway, so I was at home. I was working on, not whatever projects were able. So like new bills were going through, and I just changed everything. I went through, I never had time to work on my business because I was so busy working in my business. And I am the designer who I'm the principal designer, but I am heavily involved in every single element of design. I might not sit on CAD anymore, and I might not do logistics, and I definitely don't do the administration, but I am 100% involved in every single major design decision. So we have 15 projects that we're working on. I am in 15 different projects. So needless to say, I don't have time to constantly be working on my business. But this now gave me an opportunity to go back and look at our process and look at our contract and look at things that we can be doing differently. And I just really went back to like ground zero for me. And I said, like, it doesn't matter what we did before then. And I didn't know if my business was going to reopen, right? Like, you have to imagine, I have no idea. People are canceling, people are dropping like flies. And I'm like, okay. And I remember looking at my husband, and I said to him, like, I don't have any other skills. This is all we know how to do. And he was like, we're fine. We're going to be fine. Don't worry. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. I don't know what other skills.
But it's so amazing that you took that as an opportunity to work on your business. And I was just about to ask you, well, what did that look like? And you just told me, like, you're looking at your processes, you're kind of reevaluating, even if things are working. But what did you decide to do? Why did you decide to change? Is it just because of the pandemic, or was something not working, or something that needed a change?
Yeah, I mean, there was not any necessarily something that wasn't working. I just at that point knew that there was more, there was bigger, there was better, like that project that we were doing with the half deliverables. It was a really big project. It was a really high profile client as well. She was in the government. And I was like, I want more of that. And for me, I will tell you, after every single project, doesn't matter that I've been doing this for 16 years, I will go back and I will say what worked, what could we have improved. We do a team meeting as well to kind of talk about from my team's perspective. We've changed our internal processes also, just from, I want to know from my team, is it working for you? I don't want you to be burnt out. I want you to be inspired, and I want that creativity to flow. And I want you to come here and be fully engaged in what you're doing. Like, let's talk about things that are working. Let's talk about things that aren't working. So at that point, I was kind of like, okay, I need more of this caliber of project. And she was a referral from another renovation that we had done, like another full house renovation, but much different budget, much like, and it was, like, that's why you can't say no to anything, because that small renovation where, the clients were like petrified of every bold design decision we were making, had then referred us. And I don't think the referral for the second client, I don't think the referral was more so of like the design, because it was completely different than what she wanted, but they had just given her, I would say, an overview of their experience working with us as a team. And they were like, oh, we loved it. We loved working with Erica. We loved working with our project manager. Like, they loved the experience. And then they gave that as a reference. And I'm sure she went to their home and she saw the design, and it was, again, completely different than what she wanted. But she was like, okay, well, let's test this out. Let's see what we can do here, from a more so like an experience base than a design base. So anyways, I knew that I wanted more. And so I said, well, what can I do differently? Like, what am I always do this, but I'm like, what can I do differently? What can I change? What are things that I can do on my social media? Cause I was doing lives at that time, because it was, we were all stuck at home. So I was doing lives, and I was doing like consultations. I went back to my roots of like doing the consultations at the home shows. I started doing that in 2020 on my lives on my social media. But really just because I wanted to still be engaged, and I wanted to connect, and I wanted to still have that connection with my audience. And then I started just having this idea in my head of, okay, like, how am I going to change when we go back into business? And I knew that I wanted, like, I feel like I manifested, I swear to God, I did. I feel like I manifested things. But I was driving through this very exclusive neighborhood in Toronto, and I was like, I really want a project here. And don't get so excited, but I got a phone call from someone who lived literally in that area. It was the first time. And I went to their house and I gave them a proposal, and they didn't go for it. And I was bawling, and I said, and we're talking about only 4 years ago. We're not talking, this isn't like 10 years ago. And I was so upset. And I said to my husband, like, this was my big break. This was going to be my opportunity. And he was like, I promise you, don't worry. Like, something else is going to come. And it did, by also another word of mouth referral. And the project was complete carte blanche. It was beyond my wildest expectations of what the project would be. But it was, this is our budget. I don't want to have any involvement. You choose everything. You tell me. I don't want to know. I want to know when I'm moving in. There was zero design changes, zero design changes. Actually, no, there was one design change. It was, they wanted Paw Patrol sheets for their kids, their kids' bedroom. And I was like, can I just buy regular sheets? We'll stick the Paw Patrol ones in the linen closet, and if you really feel like you need them. And they were like, okay, fine. Just as long as he sees the Paw Patrol sheets. But that was kind of, when I tell you, complete carte blanche. And in that moment, it was a quick turnaround. Also, I had, on social media, I had shown every single part of our load-in. We were there for like, I think 2 or 3 weeks, because it was a little bit of finishing construction and then decorating. But it was such a representation of me. And I think it was the first time, because at that point there was always design changes, and there was budget restrictions, and there was, just things that we couldn't execute the exact way that I wanted. And this was my blank canvas. This was me literally telling the world, like, this is what I'm capable of. And it got tons of social media exposure because of like I photographed it as soon as I was finished. And there was a million reposts from big accounts. And that was it. Like, and the caliber, I had a very healthy budget. The caliber of finishes there was custom, there was vintage, we imported a chandelier from South Africa. We had to buy a plane ticket. We had to purchase a plane ticket because it was going to be stuck. Like the regular shipping wasn't going to work. So we had to buy a plane ticket from New York to put the chandelier on there. Like it was, and I would say the logistics behind it too. Like that was a huge learning curve for us. But we were, we were used to doing projects like that, but not at this magnitude. So that was really my, I would say like second phase of my business, where things started to really turn.
But did you do something different to get that project? I understand you think you manifested it, but I'm just wondering, was there something that you changed in that, throughout the pandemic that finally you got this dream project, carte blanche, everything? Was there something different in your process by then?
I don't know if it was necessary. Yes, definitely in the process, because I had definitely gone back. I don't think anything process related, but I do think that me being able to have that time helped in the process of that project. But I took the experience of me being at home, not really being able to, like, we were still working, but in a very different capacity at that point. I remained on social media all the time. I had nothing to show. I was at home. I had nothing to show from a design perspective. I was pulling up old images, but I was still really making sure that I never drifted from like my goal. And my goal was like, at the very beginning, you don't know, like you're scared and, you're on social media as a way of connecting. But then when I kind of knew, okay, like this is going to end at some point. I still have to keep my eye on the prize here. I never left social media. I was constantly present. I was constantly building that audience. It was someone who had actually followed me on social media who was that client. And I think that just me never really giving up hope, I think, like as cheesy as that sounds, but just kind of like not giving up the hope of I'm going to get back there. I'm going to get back there and we're going to do it. And it's going to work. I never left my social media. It almost became like a part-time job, at that point. Like I was just
showing up.
I was just showing up.
That's cool.
I think for me, showing up has been for me from the very beginning that key to whatever success was at that point. And I say that because I still don't. I know everyone laughs when I say this, but I don't consider myself successful yet. Like when people ask me, oh my God, like, how did you become so successful? I'm like, oh, I'm not there yet.
What's there then? I so want to know how would you know when you've arrived? How would you know? What is that thing? Or time looks like?
I'm not there yet. I don't know.
That's interesting.
I know when I get there, I'll know what it is. I don't know what it is yet because I haven't felt it yet. And I don't want to take anything that I have for granted. And I still, honestly, sometimes I get calls and inquiries on projects and I'm like, wow, like the imposter syndrome, like you want me to do your project? No, but I definitely have a little bit of the imposter syndrome for sure. But I still think that there's so much more. I feel like that's what I have to do to keep working to get more.
Oh my God. That's so refreshing to hear. And I love that you've given us like a glimpse into your business and all the struggles of 2020 and what came out of it. There's like a million other questions that I would love to ask you, but we're at time. So what I want to ask you last is, Is there a practice or a habit that you've implemented in your life, in your personal life, or in your business that has been a complete game changer?
Uh, I don't know. I don't know. I'm a mom of three, two really small kids. My youngest is 3 and my middle guy is 4. They're my pandemic babies. But so I feel like this year has been the first time because they are getting a little bit older that I'm feeling a sense of schedule. But otherwise, no, like I don't have that thing. Like
Hmm.
I do like to wake up before they do.
Hmm.
So I'll read, I'll go through emails. I won't necessarily reply at 6. I might send emails to my team and knowing that they'll get them like later on. If I have something to say, we have all these like group chats and shared notes that I'll sometimes like put in there. So I do that, but I like to drink my coffee alone. I'll tell you, if I don't have my morning routine, which is me like not rushing out of bed. I am not the person that the alarm goes. I actually don't have an alarm. My body just wakes up. And well, but it's because my kids have been waking me up for so long. So it's not
Hmm.
this like, oh, I'm just lucky. It's because my son is a super early riser. So usually like he's up by 6:30. So I'm usually up by 6.
Hmm.
Um, so I'll get up. I will just stay in bed. I want it to be quiet. I don't want to talk to anyone. And then like slowly I'll get out of bed and then I'll go make coffee and I'll have my coffee and I'll go on I'll go on my Instagram. I know that I don't think you're supposed to do that, but I do. I go through my emails. Like I'll definitely pull my phone and I have like my alone time for probably about 30 minutes.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been amazing, Erica. Thank you so much for being here and being such an amazing guest and like opening up in such an incredible way and sharing so
Thank
much. I'm
you.
sure our listeners are like eating it up. I love it. I love it.
We'll do a
Thank
part
you
2.
so much. We should do a part 2. I know. I love it. Well, thanks again, Erica.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Marketing for Designers. This is Masha Cohen signing off. See you next week.